I'm gonna be frank with you guys. I'm not too big of a fan of anime. Now, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it, but I wouldn't really call myself a die-hard fan of it. I'd just say I'm more of a casual watcher who just happens to be a big fan of certain franchises. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, for example, I absolutely loved that. It was peak and lived up to all the hype people were telling me about. I generally really enjoy Gundam as a whole, not just the anime but also the models. You know what, I probably just enjoy mecha anime in general. It's probably my favorite genre of anime. I watched Gurren Lagann and absolutely loved it. Evangelion wishes it was this cool. Miyazaki is one of my favorite people in the world. He can do no wrong, and I can consider myself a mad fan of Studio Ghibli. But yeah, I wouldn't really call myself a die-hard fan of anime. I don't dedicate my life to it like so many other degenerates do. However, I do very much love manga. It's just a whole lot more convenient and enjoyable for me, you know? Like, let's say you're sitting on a bus and want to watch anime. Then you gotta go through the trouble of pulling out your phone and checking if you're connected to the internet, and then having to pull up whatever streaming service you're using, like Netflix or Crunchyroll or whatever pirated site you're using, you know, like all that jazz. Whereas with manga, you can just pull out the book whenever you please without having to worry about rewinding or pausing or connecting to the internet. You can just flip to whatever page you want and start reading. You know, that's why I prefer it. It's probably my favorite form of book, honestly. I've read the original Fullmetal Alchemist manga and it's pretty much on par with the anime. It's still pretty peak. I've read Black Clover, it's pretty fun. I recently got into solo leveling and it's quite interesting. But outside Fullmetal Alchemist, none of the manga I've read is really that peak. I'm kind of interested in reading Tokyo Ghoul. I hear that's really good. I'm definitely really open to reading Monster. I hear that's really good. But recently I've been more preoccupied with watching the films of Akira Kurosawa, aka the greatest director of all time, most well known for his samurai films, and yeah, so far it's really good. I've been watching a lot of his films. They are masterpieces, but yeah, none of them have quite lived up to Harakiri, which, I mean, how do you live up to that masterpiece? It's literally the greatest work of art I've ever seen. But keeping on the topic of samurai, I have recently found out about Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest samurai who ever lived. And along with this information, I also found out that there was actually a manga made about him, and that piqued my interest. So after doing some research, I discovered Vagabond by Takahito Inoue. And the hype behind this manga is real. I hear people calling it beyond art, like absolute masterpiece. I hear people call it one of, if not the greatest manga of all time. It is often talked about in the same breath as other greats such as Vinland Saga and Berserk. And speaking of Berserk, there is no way in hell I'm reading that manga. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this manga. People are making this piece of crap out to be the definition of a masterpiece. I hear people call it very philosophical, asking the real questions. Now, I first saw this manga at my local game store in a 3-in-1 collection having the first 3 volumes. And I was intending on buying it, but it was way too expensive, so I decided to leave it on the shelf. Yeah, the only real downside to reading manga is that it's a huge undertaking to collect a series as a whole, since it will be really expensive for each volume. Whereas with anime, you really just need to pay a monthly subscription or buy a set of DVDs for them, which are usually less expensive than a manga set. And if you know me, I am not rich, and I can't be blowing my entire budget on manga, so I gotta be really picky with what I buy, and really careful. But you guys tell me, is it worth it to spend all my money on the story of Miyamoto Musashi, or should I just read something like Tokyo Ghoul instead? You guys will be the judge of that, and I will be the judge of whether Vagabond, and basically any other work of art in general, can live up to Harakiri, which, let's be honest, none ever will. Anyways, I need to go figure some crap out before I head down to Taiwan later this year.